In this video, I will show you some very interesting lines in the Queen's Gambit. So we're going to take a look at the Queen's Gambit. This is my first video in the Queen's Gambit series, and we are going to be taking a look at the Queen's Gambit accepted. So what to do after black takes your pawn. And I will show you two main things today, and those are mainly the most commonly played openings online, and that's why this is a really important lesson. So first off, black of course doesn't have to capture. So there are many different variations for black, but the most played move in general is to capture. So we are going to take a look at this first, and then the other variations in future videos. I recommend, if you play the Queen's Gambit, to play your pawn to e4 on the second move, which is also known as the Saduletto variation. The reason why is basically because I think everything else is a little bit more drawish, probably. And pawn to e4 is the most aggressive one, because white immediately puts 2 pawns in the center. We can recapture here, and you will see I have found some really amazing lines you can play here. So black, actually the most played move by black is pawn to b5, which I don't really like for black. We're going to take a look at that first, and then also at e6 and knight to f6. So b5. And the main goal with this for black is black saying, well, you gave me a free pawn, I'm going to try to hold on to that pawn and see if I can keep it. Sometimes you can punish this in the Queen's Gambit by trying to win a rook here on a8, but that's not possible if your pawn is here on e4. So we're going to have to fight back against this pawn center. And the most straightforward thing to do here is to immediately play pawn to a4, challenging this pawn on b5. And now black has to make a decision, and black has to defend this, because otherwise we are just going to capture. a6 never really works in these variations, of course, because otherwise black would be losing the rook. So most of the time you will probably get c6 or bishop d7, which isn't really good either. We're going to take a look at that in a moment. So c6, the thing you have to do here is just trade, because we are trying to create weaknesses on the queen side. And now you can say, well, black still has the structure, but we're going to try to attack it. And it's basically impossible for black to try and hold on. And the thing we are going to do is play knight to c3. And knight to c3 immediately attacks this pawn. And now black has to defend it. And a6, of course, again, doesn't really work because of this trade. And then white can just capture here this rook in the corner. So that doesn't really work. And it's pretty difficult here for black to hold on. The most played move, almost 1 in every 2 games, is bishop d7. Pawn a6, also very popular, but I just showed you it doesn't work. So bishop d7. And against bishop d7, there is this amazing line you can use to get a winning advantage. And this is actually almost never played by white. So it's a rather obscure line that's not well known. And that is to play pawn to d5. And pawn to d5, you should not immediately understand why this move works, but you will see in a moment why this move works. Well, the thing is, it's now black to move. And black can actually no longer develop this knight. Black can develop this knight, but it's rather bad because he will just get attacked. So basically what black is going to do is play either e6 or e5. And whatever they play, we are just going to capture that with our pawn. And then black has to recapture, and they can choose to capture with the bishop or with the pawn. And most players actually capture this with the pawn. Because of course, if they capture with the bishop, you can trade, they lose their right to castle, and then you can just pick up this free pawn as well. So basically, most players, I think almost about 90% here, capture with the pawn. And now you just have an amazing attack. And that is knight takes b5. So they are trying to save this pawn, but you can still capture it. Because after the bishop takes, there is queen h5. Queen h5 is a check, but also a double attack. So black has to do something, most likely g6. You can pick up this bishop. You also give a check. Black has to block, and then you can also pick up this pawn. So now you went from being down a pawn to being up a pawn, and the black structure is also completely destroyed. White has a pretty easy time. You can just develop some pieces, be safe, castle, and you just have an easy game. Black doesn't really have a safe space for the king either. So that is the main idea here. As I said, if they play pawn to e5, you can also take. It's basically the same variation. If they play knight f6, they are also losing immediately because of e5. And if you take a look at this knight, you will realize it basically has nowhere to go. So the knight has to go back. And now there is this most amazing tactic, which is pawn to e6. Attacking the bishop and the bishop, yep, and also this pawn. and black just doesn't have a response. Of course, they are probably gonna take, and then you're just gonna recapture. And now if black takes here, they are in trouble because of queen f3, and queen f3 attacks the rook. So white has to play knight e7, and then there is queen to e4. And this is just amazing because this bishop again is under attack and it doesn't really have a safe square. It probably has to go back, and you should already see here that this is starting to be quite problematic for black. You can take here on b5, so that's a free pawn. And then if black tries to do something, you just have this, and this is a checkmate. This is a smothered mate. And black's already lost. And of course, black can also try something else. For example, here, pawn to e6. But then you can just take the rook, give a check, and then also win back this queen. So let's say the king moves over, you can win back the queen. And white is just completely winning in every line. So, as I said, against this early pawn to b5, there are many really good variations for white. So if you face this and you know this ID, with being really aggressive, with playing this a4, d5, you should always be fine. And then the second thing we're going to take a look at here is a little bit of a different variation where black captures this. We are playing e4, but black's like, okay, you can take the pawn back, it's fine. And that's actually the second most played move by black. So in this variation, you will also get this a lot. The same goes basically for knight f6 in many lines. That's just going to transpose as well. So pawn to e6. So we're going to capture this with the bishop. That was the entire plan. We tried to take up the center, develop the bishop, and you can already see that white is just a little bit better here because we have bishop in the center and we have two central pawns as well. And a good thing that black could probably do is play c5 in many of these lines, but c5 is actually not that popular of a move. It's not played that much by black, especially online. You almost never get c5. So I'm going to keep c5 for a future video. Today we're going to take a look at the most popular moves by black, which is knight to f6. And I found some really amazing lines here. So, and they are really easy to remember as well, because we have the center and black is just attacking the pawn. So we're going to defend the pawn. And then almost everyone with the black pieces will try to pin this knight, which of course is not a bad move, just because black would like to capture this pawn and in some way destabilize our center. There are other moves possible, but again, white is just winning in every variation because we always have a really amazing trap that basically arises in all of these lines. We are first going to play pawn to e5, and the goal is to get this knight out because this knight is an important defender of this enemy king side, and we are going to launch an attack on the enemy king really soon. So we try to get this knight out. The only thing is here you have to be a little bit careful because of course this is attacked 2 times, so you kind of want to defend it. So we are going to defend it with our bishop to d2. If black takes this, which is one of the most popular moves, we are just going to take with the pawn, always. Because we want to keep this bishop here on this diagonal, because we are going to use it for future tricks. And if black castles, this is just one of the lines. You can play queen to g4, and then black basically has to play pawn to f5 or pawn to f6 or try something. Because if black just plays a slow move, we have bishop h6. And bishop h6, now we are attacking this twice, and this is threatening a checkmate. And there's no way to defend this for black except playing pawn to g6 and then dropping the rook as well. So white is just winning in this line. We're just winning material. And even if black tries to defend with something like f5, I'm just going to show you a quick line. For example, takes. You can always develop the knight and then you can castle. So that's fine as well. But there are many sub variations, but basically everything leads to the same. So for example here, let's say they play bishop e7, for example. They don't pin the knight, they play bishop e7. You just have to know this main ID. e5, we push away the knight and we play queen g4. It's always the same. We are attacking this. Even if they are not castled yet, we're going to attack it. And if they castle, we're always going to play bishop h6 and then just win the rook. So it's pretty simple to remember this. If they play knight c6 in this line, that's also possible. We're going to develop the knight, we're going to castle, and then we're going to get a position like this, which is really solid as well. So also not that hard to remember. And here we are even gambiting a pawn because we have rook to e1, and we are basically trying to force black to take here, and we're going to lead them down this trick where we have a queen to b3. And queen to b3, we are attacking this knight, and if you look at this knight can actually not go anywhere. So against this knight c6 line, we are just gambiting this pawn in the center so we can then trap the knight potentially. And even if black goes back, that's actually not so good, because you can see we have this lined up, we can push d5 and everything is gonna explode. And if you want to see all of these variations, you should definitely check out my Lichess study, which is in the Discord group. So again, and this variation, many amazing lines for white. Another thing I wanted to show is just a sub variation. For example, here, if we play e5 and they decide to go to e4, which is also possible because they want to attack this twice instead of going to d5. You can play queen d3 here. So queen d3, you are attacking the knight, and we are always trying to do the same thing, trying to force some exchange, trying to have this pawn here, take away the square. After they move, we're going to go here with the queen. After they castle, we're going to go here with the bishop, g6, and we simply win a rook. So this idea is just there in every single line. Another thing I wanted to show you is if you go for this early e5 push and black decides to not move the knight, but instead capture here, you can just recapture, and again, this knight has to move somewhere, for example here, and now we can just play the queen out. If they castle, we have this bishop h6 and we win the rook. So that's the main idea I wanted to show you, that you can basically always have this same tactic, always play for this, and it's really solid. Another thing is, of course, black can also be a little bit more safe. For example, let's say takes, and here black might realize that, okay, I actually can't castle, because if I castle, I'm gonna run into this queen g4, bishop h6. It's always the same problems that black runs in. So black can try to play something else, but if you take a look at this, let's just say knight to e7, for example, knight to d7, or maybe bishop d7, doesn't really matter. You can still always go for this plan with white. You can just play queen to g4. You can attack this pawn. What is black gonna do? Are they gonna castle? If they castle, you always have this bishop h6. If they don't castle, maybe they have to play something like g6. But this structure is just so weak for black, because there is no dark squared bishop here to defend all of these holes. And you can, for example, play something like bishop to g5, attack the queen. And this queen is just under attack, and it's really hard to defend this, because this square is really needed by black, this f6 square, and they don't have it. So they might have to play a really defensive move here. But you can already tell this is not what you want to play as black. All of your pieces are jumbled up. You can't really castle. You can always get checkmates in many lines. Here on g7 as well. So it's really hard. And white, you can just do normal developing moves. And as I said, if they castle, we can basically play for tricks. We can put pressure here. Let's say they defend. Everything is just losing. We can castle, and this king side is going to fall apart really soon. For example, a6. And you can always break open the position with d5 as well. Even if they take, you can take. This knight is pinned. Everything is just falling apart for black. So that's why I think you should definitely play this variation with this early e4 push. And then you should always aim to play for this position. Where we are, and that's just the key idea to remember, we're always going to push e5 no matter where this bishop is. We want to kick this knight out of this square. Trading here is actually not that good for black. And then in the future, we're always going to play our queen to g4. And that's just really hard to defend from the black side. The only real thing to do for black is to go for an earlier c5 and try to fight back for the center. But if you want to learn more about this, you should watch my other videos on the Queen's Gambit. That's it. If you enjoyed this, definitely subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.